Hi, and welcome back to the One-on-One podcast brought to you by High Tops Media Network. I'm Jack Acello alongside my partner in crime, Noah Schwartz, and today we are once again recording at the 44 Media Studio in Hillsdale, New Jersey. Thanks to our man Gregory for making it all happen and running all the operations. Now, I always tell this to Noah that the two best sports months of the year are October and March. And right now, it just feels special. You feel it in the air. Baseball is right around the corner starting next week. The NFL offseason's been exciting. The NHL playoffs are nearing. Heck, even WrestleMania is 2 weeks away. But for us, it's all about basketball. Today, March 21st, the madness begins. And the NBA is at the point where every game is must see and must win. And today, we are covering all things hoops. Noah, my man, how are you doing? And what would you like to talk about?
Jack, happy March Madness. It is, as you said, Thursday, the first day of the round of 64. At this point in the middle of recording, we've had 4 games go final. So we're in the middle of that second window of games today. And it's been pretty exciting already. Duquesne, as an 11 seed, they got a win over BYU.
That
Michigan
made me
State,
smile.
Tom Izzo doing what he always does. And a couple of the higher seeds, Arizona and Creighton, have won so far. But it's been a great day of the madness to this point, and we'll record and talk NBA. We'll talk some college hoops, and it'll be a good show.
Definitely. All right, let's start first with the NBA standings, and we will be giving a standings update each week going forward until the NBA playoffs begin. So let's take a look. Obviously, we'll start in the Eastern Conference. So Boston obviously remains at the top. Milwaukee and Cleveland, they've had their struggles lately. This week, they've moved a little bit. They've moved a little bit down, and they're closer to the 4-5 than they were last week. The Knicks remain just a game and a half out of 3 and 2.5 out of Milwaukee. They could inch closer tonight if they can pull off an upset in Denver. And then Orlando,
what a win that would be,
Orlando and Indiana are close behind. Miami and Philly are fighting for that home court advantage right now in that 7-8 game. So what sticks out to you the most in the East right now?
I think the first thing is that the Celtics are 11 games up in the conference over Milwaukee. That is just ridiculous. How
Scary.
great they've
Had a
been.
scare though last night.
Yeah, and we talked on our last show here at the studio about they had those couple of games where they struggled, a couple of bad losses, Cleveland, Denver, and some of the games recently haven't been as great, but still 11-game lead. I mean, they're going to be clinching the conference in the next maybe week or so. We still got, teams have 13, 14 games left, so it's pretty amazing that they're up that high. And then you look at this jumble right after Boston.
From 2 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, from 2 to 5. Milwaukee, we kind of thought them and Cleveland were going to be fighting it out for 2-3. Well, maybe the Knicks or Magic could actually jump into that spot. The Pacers have kind of fallen back a little bit.
Halliburton struggled.
Yeah,
mightily.
Halliburton has had a little rough. He even said recently, I have never had struggles like this. I've never had a slump like this in my life. And I think he came back too quickly from the hamstring injury, and it's cost him.
He's not comfortable.
I saw a stat on Halliburton yesterday or the day before. He was averaging 26 before the injury and around the time of the in-season tournament. He hasn't had a single game since he came back from the injury where he had 26 points. So it just goes to show you he is not 100%. He probably did it to get the extra money to make All-NBA and hit the 65-game limit. Probably was not the smartest decision for the playoffs, but in terms of him making his own money, which I totally respect. Good for him on doing that. He'll be All-NBA this year.
His team is on the cusp of being in the play-in, only a half game up on the 7th and 8th seed Miami Heat and Philadelphia 76ers.
And you look at that, Jack. So 6, 7, 8 really close, only a half game separating those 3 teams. I mean, Philly it is so hard for them to score right now. The new rules haven't helped them more so than maybe any other team where it's such a slog, and Tobias Harris has been so bad. We know Miami will probably do better than this come playoff time, and they'll be one of the hardest teams to face, but it's not really that great for them right now. Bam Adebayo hit a buzzer beater over Detroit the other day, barely even beat the...
That's crazy.
How many wins do the Pistons have? 12 wins?
12 wins, yeah.
So those two teams not looking particularly great right now, but again, it's still the regular season, and those two teams are very experienced when it comes to the playoffs, so we'll see how it all shakes out. But the main thing that sticks out to me that I look at is how big of a lead Boston has and how dominant they've been, and obviously they are the favorites and should be in the conference.
Yeah, that's certainly a sticking point to me, but what I really love this year is that jumble from 2 to 5, and with coming up in the final weeks of the season, anything is still possible, and a lot of people like to say a lot of the time that the NBA regular season doesn't always matter, but it feels really important right now, and seeding could be everything. Don't get me wrong, as dominant as Boston's been, we obviously know their struggles. they've had in years past with turnovers and not hitting threes. So who's to say nobody can make an upset if they can go on a run? Miami's always dangerous, but some of these teams, some of these young teams like the Pacers and Magic are ready to take that next step. So certainly a lot of exciting action.
Yeah,
in
and
the Eastern Conference.
I'll say on the Bucks too, a really impressive week for them. I think generally haven't had Giannis for the last 2 games, and that hamstring. That's a concern.
Chris Middleton's looked solid also coming back.
Yeah, he's come back from the ankle, looked good, but they haven't had Giannis. They went out and beat the Phoenix Suns without Giannis, and then they almost went out and beat the Celtics last night on the road without Giannis. So
it was also coming back from I think Boston had an 18-point lead.
Yeah,
at one point.
and I think it was like 13 with just a few minutes left. So a late run there. Bobby Portis was awesome the last 2 games.
He's been incredible lately.
Yeah, so I think with Milwaukee, a lot of people still view them as the Adrian Griffin version of that team, and
they've picked it up.
They really have. Dame looks better. I read an article ESPN did this week where the 2-man game with Giannis and Dame is really starting to come together recently.
That's going to be so dangerous in the playoffs.
They're running more screen and rolls together. They've done that more in the last couple weeks than they have at any other point during the season. And I think you're going to start to see the talent of that team really start to kick in now, gain some chemistry, hopefully get Giannis back here in the next few days, and then start to really take off as we head towards the end of the season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's switch over to the Western Conference. So, strangely enough, the two most interesting storylines to me in the Western Conference are at the top and the very bottom. So let's start with the top, obviously.
Yep. The
battle for the 1 seed between the young and up-and-comers, Oklahoma City Thunder, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They currently are a half game up over the reigning defending champion Denver Nuggets and the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. Minnesota still in the race, but they've fallen to a game and a half behind the 1 seed, and it could be tough to overcome that with Karl Anthony Towns out. But let's start with OKC and Denver. There's so much story here, obviously fighting for the 1 seed, but probably the 2 favorites for the MVP race also. Do you think whoever wins that 1 seed could be the deciding factor in the MVP race?
Frankly, no.
No?
It's still
That was dramatic.
It's still, I mean, the guy is unreal. We'll talk later about Kyrie's buzzer beater.
Of course we
will,
yes.
Even in that game, where the Nuggets didn't even win, at any point in the last 4 minutes of that game, did you really feel like Denver wasn't going to come back and win? And they basically did. If Jamal Murray doesn't miss a wide-open 10-footer, they probably end up winning that game. And Jokic was unbelievable down the stretch. We've talked about it so many times. The best late-game clutch offense in the NBA. There's just nothing you can do with that 2-man game with him and Murray. So I'm pretty impressed, frankly, that the Thunder have actually held on to the 1 seed. It seemed like coming out of the break that Denver would just go on this crazy run, and they've only lost a couple of games since the break. But the Thunder are hanging tough. And, it's a long season for a young team. They haven't really dealt with any injuries, so that's great. Chet Holmgren and Shai, they've been healthy all year. And that's not really the expectation for a team that's so young. But they've held on to that spot, and they deserve a lot of credit for it. As does, by the way, Minnesota, only a game and a half out of first.
Without Karl Anthony Towns.
Without Cat. They didn't have Rudy, Cat, and Naz Reid the other night against the Nuggets.
All
and
three
lost the game
men.
by 3 points.
Yeah, it's very
and
impressive.
Edwards has been awesome
and
last week and a half.
Let's not mention he took the soul of John Collins earlier last week.
Was that one of the best, 5-10 dunks we've seen in the last, 5-6? I mean, that was incredible what he did.
Yeah, it was insane. They both actually got injured technically on that play. I believe they said John Collins had a concussion. I certainly just think he was out due to embarrassment because that was
the best was
was just brutal.
I saw a tweet that it was Collins out and got dunked on too hard.
Yeah,
there
literally.
was no injury report. It was just got dunked on too hard.
Yeah, literally. So moving down the Western Conference, the Clippers, they've struggled a little bit recently. We're going to talk about them a little bit later, but they once looked like they could be the 1 seed. Now they are fighting for possible home court advantage in the first round with the New Orleans Pelicans. But we're going to get into both those teams a little bit later. The Kings last week had 2 big victories over the Bucks and Lakers. They now sit as the final seed above the play-in at the 6th seed. Then in the play-in, we have Dallas and Phoenix tied right now. Dallas currently has the tiebreaker, so they are the 7th seed. And then probably the most other interesting storyline out west is the battle in the 9-10 seed. And somehow it's come to that between the 2 teams that it seems everything always comes back to. The Los Angeles Lakers
the world revolves around
and the Golden State Warriors, because the league for the last 10 to 15 years has revolved around 2 players, and it seems like time will never escape them. And that is LeBron James and Stephen Curry. So who do you think is going to win this race? The other night, last week, Saturday night, these 2 teams played. The Warriors came out with a victory, but the only thing people remember from that game is the officiating and how it took nearly a half hour to end the game.
Anthony Davis getting poked in the eye and missing 80% of the game or whatever it was.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, the officiating was just brutal.
In terms of head-to-head, I believe Golden State has the tiebreaker over them.
They've won 2 or 3.
They've won 2 or 3, and they have one more to play.
Yeah, they play each other. I think it's the last week of the season.
That game
in Golden State, so that game could potentially be huge. You look at this play-in race, right, and it's kind of a pillow fight between 9 and 10 with the Lakers and Warriors. It's like who's going to get this home court, who's not. I mean, at the end of the day, those teams probably aren't going anywhere. I think Phoenix and Dallas, with the Kings a little bit above them, is a pretty interesting race.
Phoenix and Dallas is always fun.
Yeah, those teams clearly don't like each other. We know that. Kyrie, KD, that whole rivalry
Booker
there.
and Luka.
Yeah. But with the Suns, I know their record's pretty solid. 40 and 29 is not bad, and in other years they'd be much higher than 8th in the West. It is concerning.
Oh,
you watch that team, and it just does not look like they're going very far.
And I said, I mean, don't get me wrong. We said it at the beginning of the season. We had concerns about this team. Their defense they've done some stuff to try and fix it, but they're still a team that scares me and makes you think that they may have to get to 140.
Yeah, it's statistically the defense isn't awful.
But come playoff time, where the game is much more physical and you have to play through a lot more contact.
Good luck to Grayson Allen, Bradley Beal, and Yusuf Nurkic trying to play one-on-one defense against the best players in the world in the playoffs. Good luck. I don't see it with Phoenix. They've gotten a lot of contributions from guys we didn't expect, frankly. Grayson Allen has been awesome this entire season shooting the ball, and he's been one of their better players. Do I think he's a playoff guy? Not really. Do I think any of their minimum guys are really going to have much of an impact when it matters? No. But their record's pretty good, but right now, if they lost in the play-in tournament and the Lakers went and beat them in the last game, or they lost to Dallas, whatever it was, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm not even sure if they're really a playoff team.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but mentioning Phoenix quickly, just one thing I want to throw out. And we mentioned they were 40 and 29, and we have concerns. They could be in a lot worse shape if it wasn't specifically just for Kevin Durant, who also last night moved ahead of Shaquille O'Neal, I believe, is now 8th all-time
Congrats to KD.
in scoring. So congratulations to Kevin Durant. But also, I'm going to praise him for another thing, which we haven't been able to say in recent years. Kevin Durant has stepped up in a way this year, and I say that in a way that he's played more games than he has since the NBA Finals where he tore his Achilles. He's played.
Yeah, we're going like 5-6 years back now.
Yeah, he hasn't played more than about 50 games the last couple seasons. He's currently at 61 and counting. So
and had an All-NBA amazing year.
Yep. So he's still going. I believe he's third right now. No, he's not third. Fourth in the NBA in scoring. So he's truly doing some stuff this year, and obviously 61 games at 36 years old. So mad respect to Kevin Durant. All right, that looks like it.
Can I just mention one more thing about the standings?
Go for it.
So you look into the bottoms here. Most of these teams we know are going
Houston
nowhere
may have
fast.
a little shot.
The Houston Rockets have been awesome.
They're 8-2 and they've won 6 straight.
Yeah, and Jalen Green has been excellent. He had 42 the other night in a win. That was just, I think, tied his career high. And we kind of thought their season was cooked the minute Alperen Şengün went out.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, things have changed for them in a much more positive way. Jalen Green,
he's been balling.
You probably go through the first 50, 60 games, and you could make a list of the players who we had the highest expectations for that were the worst this season. And he'd be on the list, like him and Jordan Poole are probably like 1-2. And Jalen Green has been great recently, so props to him, and he has completely turned their season around. 33 and 35, only 3 games behind the Warriors. Not likely that they get into the play-in, but you can't rule it out where you can rule it out with basically all these other teams. Utah, everybody else has fallen, and Houston's risen significantly recently. So,
yeah, but Houston has a small chance. I just laugh at this. I mean, we know they don't. The NBA doesn't say they want teams to win, but can you imagine if Houston gets in the way of that 9-10 game? How mad they're gonna be. The commissioner Adam Silver and all the executives are probably looking at that 9-10 game going, that game, if it's Lakers Warriors, that's going to have better ratings than the NBA Finals.
But I think on one hand, they're like, great, this is awesome that we're going to get great ratings for these 2 all-time players. And then they immediately realize, oh, wait, one of them's immediately going home, Yeah. And frankly, when you get into the playoffs, that 10:30 window or 10 o'clock window, in the first round, it's going to be much more compelling with Steph and LeBron potentially playing in it.
Over Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet.
Jalen Green or the Kings being in there, or any of these other Western teams that do not have even close to the national audience that the Lakers and Warriors and Steph and LeBron do.
Last year, that second round series, just pure gold to those NBA executives. All right, let's move on. So that is our NBA standings updated. As we said before, we will be doing that each week throughout the rest of the regular season.
13 more games, Jack. Crazy how close we are to the end of the year already.
Yeah,
we're in the final little stretch here.
It's fly by, and it goes by a lot faster when your team's actually good. I've had a lot of years where they've been bad, and it goes a lot slower. So Interesting. All right, let's talk some college hoops, excuse me. The madness has begun today, March 21st. The first round begins. We're going to give some Final Four predictions and some teams we may think that can go on a little bit of surprise. So, Noah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, so I wrote here, I have my little bracket, which I do every year. I keep track of who wins each and every game. I filled out, there we go, for the camera. Take a look at that. Here's my bracket. I do this each and every year. I have them going back almost a decade now to just go in historical perspectives, who went where in each tournament.
And they are perfect? Never.
That's true. I'm not a big bracket filler-outer, to say. That doesn't really matter to me. But I did make a Final Four here. So I had it as UConn in the East region getting out, had a chance to repeat. North Carolina, who's winning in the second half of their game right now in the first round over Wagner. Creighton, who won earlier today. I think they're going to come out of the Midwest region, the 3 seed. And then Kentucky, as out of that South region, beating Houston in the Elite Eight. And then I think UConn's going to get to the finals against Kentucky, and Kentucky's going to beat them. I really like the Wildcats this year. They don't really defend anybody, so that's obviously a huge concern. But that offense is really, really good. Antonio Reeves, one of the best players in the country, 20 points a game. And then, Jack, we obviously watch the tournament because we're college basketball fans, but we also watch it with an NBA eye, right? We want to see the guys who will make an impact at the next level. And Kentucky has 2 guys who really have a chance to be special off their bench. Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepherd. Both those guys do not start. They're both freshmen, and they come in as the 2 guards off the bench and just make stuff happen. Yep. Dillingham's a speedy little guard, can shoot. Shepherd's kind of plays that Tyler Hero, Devin Booker-ish role.
Without a doubt.
Right, I think that's probably a good way to describe it.
Best 3-point shooter in the tournament, probably.
Yeah.
53% on the season.
Yeah, over 50% for the year. So I love that team. Again, they don't really defend very well, and they're kind of young. So that's always a concern with Calipari's teams, but they're very, very talented, and they've got a lot of guys that we're probably going to see at the next level. UConn, we saw them last year, how great they were, and they come back, with another loaded team. Donovan Clingan, the center, is probably going to be close to a lottery pick, I would have to imagine. Tristan Newton's really good as well. They're point guard, so I really like those 2 teams. And then Creighton, I tend to like a lot of the veteran teams that have some continuity, and we saw Creighton play really well today in their win. Baylor Shireman and Ryan Kalkbrenner and Trey Alexander, that's one of the better big threes we have, and all those guys have kind of been around for a while. And then North Carolina, the duo over Baycott and RJ Davis is probably the best in the country, or right up there. So those are the 4 teams I have going to the Final Four, and all of them are top 3 seeds. 2 of them number 1, 2 of them number 1s, 2 of them number 3s. And there's a lot of other teams I'm interested in watching. Obviously I watch it with an NBA eye, as I said, to see some of these prospects. But I love the tournament. It's one of the, as you said, best days of the sports year, sports calendar. And I'm looking forward to watching this throughout the next few weeks here, and I know you are as well.
Yeah, so am I. I also have Kentucky winning it all for me, and like
you do.
Yeah, like you said.
Stealing my idea.
No. Like you said, though, I agree. I always look at it as who I think are the players that are going to make a big impact on the next level. And you mentioned them, Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd, 2 absolute studs. They both are probably projected. I believe the last time I looked at the projections, they're both in the top 10.
Yeah, Shepherd, I saw one mock draft.
I think I saw him he's in the top 3.
Yeah, he even went number 1 in one of the drafts. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll have to see through the process. It kind of looks like the 2 international guys.
Yeah, the 2 guys from
Reece
France.
and Alex Sarr probably right now would look like the top 2 picks.
Yeah.
But Dillingham and Shepherd are right there. So they're going to be, high lottery picks as well, for sure.
Yeah, they're 2 guys that can make a big impact on the next level.
And Kentucky guards, Jack.
Yeah.
Those guys almost always hit.
Yeah, Kentucky guards are always good. Shout out to Devin Booker.
And like 20 others.
Yeah, a bunch of others, but most notably Booker, at least for right now. I have them beating Gonzaga on their side of the bracket. Gonzaga, always a good team. They always just find their way sometimes, whether they have elite prospects for the next level or not.
I believe this would be if they get there, their 8th straight Sweet 16, which is just crazy. And I know they've never won the championship yet, but just to even win 2 games in each tournament is pretty incredible.
No, it's insane. It's weird though. This is their first time in it feels like 15 years that Drew Timme is on the court. So I find that kind of funny. And then I have on the other side, I have North Carolina over UConn. So I have North Carolina and Kentucky in my finals instead of UConn. North Carolina, they build themselves a little bit differently than I think most teams do. They play with a lot of size, more so than other schools. And in college, it's a lot of a different sport. Shooting isn't as important, I think, as defense and rebounding. It's a much slower pace, and having those big guys is a huge advantage. So I like North Carolina.
Baycott's been there forever, and they've got shooters too.
Baycott's a beast.
Cormac Ryan and RJ, and just there's a few guys there that can really shoot. They have a freshman point guard, Elliot Cadeau, who's pretty interesting. Could be an NBA player at some point. So They're really good. And it's been a kind of a weird up and down tenure with Hubert Davis in the 3 years he's been there. The first year they were a lower seed that got to the title game and almost won it. They were a couple points off of Kansas. Last year they were the projected number 1 or 2 team going into the season and then had a really bad year. And then this year expectations weren't quite as high.
And they're the one seed.
So yeah, that's North Carolina basketball for you. It's always really interesting. It's not always the most consistent.
Yeah. Who's your one team out of the teams you didn't pick in your Final Four that you think could maybe go on a big run and get in there
Illinois.
and possibly win?
Illinois? Yeah, I really like Illinois. They were the Big Ten tournament champions, and Terrence Shannon, he's awesome. Quincy Guerrier, former Syracuse player who I really liked, who transferred there. That's a really, really good team, and they've kind of been knocking on the door for a few years. The Io DeSumo teams were really good, and they didn't make it all the way, but I think this is a team that has a real chance to. They've got shooting. They defend pretty well. And frankly, they're battle-tested, right? I mean, coming out of the Big Ten, that's a ton of really good teams there. They just won the tournament. They beat Wisconsin in the finals. They got through. And the Big Ten's really good. Obviously, we know about Zach Edey and Purdue. And there's a lot of talent in that conference. For them to be a 3 seed, I think it's set up well for them to go on a deep run. I think they're going to probably lose in the Elite Eight to UConn. It's just unfortunate they're in that region. But that's a team that I really have enjoyed watching throughout the year, and I think they could make a deep run as well.
Yeah, I liked Illinois. I won't say the same thing. A team I liked, and I've liked them over the last couple of seasons, I like Alabama. Okay. I think they're a team that they've really started to build a nice program. They don't have a guy that necessarily screams out to you, NBA player at the next level. Last year they had that in Brandon Miller, who's...
Yeah, and Noah Klein, who's also a first-round pick.
But Miller looks awesome. He's probably going to finish 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting behind Wemby and Chet right now, but... what I like about Alabama is they are a team that does have a lot of experience. A lot of their roster is older, and sometimes that, having those older guys with much more college hoops experience is a benefit. So I think they can possibly make a run. But they are going to have to go through North Carolina, so it could be tough.
Yeah, that UConn bracket and the North Carolina region, they're tough. I mean, even for UConn, just look at what they might have to face in the round of 32. FAU, a team that was in the Final Four last year. I know they had a down season. We're probably overseeded at 8. But if that happens, a team that's obviously very battle-tested has been there before. That's not a team that UConn's going to want to face. Then you have to potentially play Illinois. Then you get to the bottom of the region, and Iowa State's the 2 seed. It's pretty tough, for a team that is the defending national champions and was the presumptive favorite and the number 1 overall seed. That they get a tough draw they have to get through to get to the Final Four.
Indeed, they do. So that's our thoughts on this year's tournament, and we'll have some more coverage of it as the madness continues.
By the way, I just mentioned Illinois. They are in a 1-point game with Morehead State at the half, the 14 seed. So that game's very close. So my Illinois pick could be wrong in an hour. We'll find out.
Yeah. We'll see how smart you are. All right, we're going to move on here to the Pelicans and the Los Angeles Clippers, who have been making some noise lately. Okay, so now we're going to move on back to the NBA. We're going to talk the New Orleans Pelicans and Los Angeles Clippers. These two teams have been making some noise lately, one for good reasons, one for not so good reasons. So the Pelicans have been playing some very good basketball. They've won 3 straight and are 8-2 in their last 10. And they've kind of moved up in the standings, and they're on the brink of the 4 seed and possibly getting home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. This would also be Zion Williamson's first ever time in the playoffs, so that will certainly be exciting. And we've made fun of the Pelicans over the course of the season.
As a collective
podcast,
we owe the Pelicans an apology.
Yeah, we owe the Pelicans an apology, at least as of late. I still don't know how high on them I am, but we've always said, like, they have a lot of talent, but they don't make
trust them at all.
You don't trust them, and they don't strike fear into an opponent. So they've been making some noise. They're trying to change that narrative, and they're 1 game behind the Clippers for that 4 seed. And it's interesting, we have a friend that is a Clippers fan, and he always tells us that the Pelicans are just that one team they can never get by, it seems like.
That's what he does say, them and the Nuggets.
Yeah, them and the Nuggets, but he said he is very scared if they have to play the Pelicans in the first round.
And frankly, I think it's going to be a series in which the Clippers are not getting home court advantage. I think the Pelicans are going to pass them.
You think they're going to pass them?
Yeah,
wow.
we'll talk Clippers in a minute, but they haven't been great recently. The Pelicans have. Just some numbers here. You said 8-2 in their last 10, 15-5 going back to February 1st. And in that time, they are a top 5 defense and a top 5 offense. They're top 10 overall for the entire season.
The defense shocks me.
But they're even better in the last month and a half here or so, going back to February. And I think a lot of that has kind of coincided with Zion Williamson making the jump, right? And we knew Zion amazingly talented, like an all-world player, and he's shown that before. But this season was pretty rough for him.
Numbers are down.
The numbers are significantly down. His rebounding is lower than it's ever been, shockingly, for a guy with that athleticism.
His assists, though, his playmaking is up.
Yeah, his scoring's a little bit down as well. So we didn't really see what everybody was loving on Zion for a while this season, and he has totally picked it up. And there was a report out, I don't know if you saw this the other day, from Brian Windhorst of ESPN, said that he thinks that he's lost around 25 pounds since the in-season tournament.
He's on pace to... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. He's on pace. He's played 57 games so far this year. The most he's ever played in one season is 61, so it looks like he's also going to break that.
Yeah, he's going to surpass that. And in the last few weeks, he's really leveled up. These are just the last 6 games for Zion scoring-wise. 23, 27, 33, 34, 26, and 28, with 5 of those games being wins. Did you see his dunk against the Nets the other day?
Oh.
He looks like he has his burst back, and he did not have that early in the season. But if he has lost 25 pounds, if that report is really right, then, man, this is a guy you don't want to see because he's so quick, he's so physical, so you can't put a smaller guy on him because he's going to overpower you. You can't put a bigger guy on him because he's going to go right by that guy if he's at the top peak athletically again. I don't really know what to do with him offensively. He is so tough to stop. And then you look at the rest of the team. They've got depth. They've got one of the deepest rosters in the league. We've always
certainly
thought that.
One of the deepest rosters.
They've got talent. They've got shooting. They've got defenders. They've got length. It's a really complete team, but we always kind of wondered, like, what's the deal with Zion and Ingram? Are they good enough to actually get this team over the hump and maybe win a playoff series or whatever? Well, right now, with the way it looks like and the way they're playing, maybe they actually could do that. So we're going to see. I don't necessarily trust them, but it's been getting better and better and better, and that's what you want from a team as we head towards the playoffs.
Yeah, that's certainly what you want, and they're looking like they could play the Clippers in the first round. I still have concerns over this roster. Again, I've been impressed that their team defense has been well, but when I always look at their team, I just say, I don't trust these defenders as individuals. And in the playoffs, that's what I think really matters is it comes down to a couple possessions, and NBA is a lot of isolation at times. So our defenders going to be able to step up and make plays. And when I look at a guy like CJ McCollum, he's never been that throughout his career in terms of defense. Same with when it comes to Jonas Valanciunas. B.I. is not necessarily known as a defender. Neither is Zion. And don't get me wrong, as big and as scary as Zion is, I am curious to see how I could see teams attacking him, especially in the postseason if they bring him out in the perimeter. I think he's in terms of one of the best defenders in terms of help defenders. The guy goes to the basket, he runs over, jumps in the air, and blocks the shot.
He can kind of rove around pretty well.
He's a rover, but I could see teams trying to attack him specifically. So
well, we're going to see.
That concerns me.
If he is at that peak level of athleticism, though, he's really tough.
Yeah, but then again, they have guys like Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. So
yeah, their bench is really good.
Yeah, they have I like Larry Nance. They got a nice, solid team. And then a little bit of coaching concerns me. They have a coach that doesn't have a ton of playoff experience, so that could always be a tough situation. But they're still a young team in terms of B.I. and Zion, Alvarado. So the only guy that really has any postseason experience is McCollum. So,
but again, we said it. They're a team that we didn't trust their stars. We like the roster, we like the depth, all that, but we didn't trust that they had 2 guys good enough to go toe to toe with the elite duos in the Western Conference, and that's why we always took them as kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Right now, it looks like they might. You know, they might have that level from their top 2 guys.
I will say now, I believe they have potential to win a first-round playoff series. So,
yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it's going to be against the Clippers.
Yeah, more than likely it'll be against the Clippers, who have struggled recently. They're 5-5 in their last 10. And it seems also last night, I don't know if you saw this play. I'm sure you did. It blew up Twitter. How
funny was
this? They were playing the Portland Trailblazers, so obviously that's a team they handled pretty easily. But at the same time, they look like they're having a little too much fun out there. Kawhi Leonard, James Harden drove down the lane, flipped it out to Kawhi Leonard in the corner, and he did this when they were up 20, and he contested Kawhi Leonard's shot as a joke. It was very funny.
Someone said it was the best defense Harden's played this entire season.
You can make that case. But,
I saw that on the internet.
But I didn't love that. Not necessarily because it was going to cost them the game, but just because you've been a team that's struggling lately. It's not like you're Boston. You have an 11-game lead in your conference, and you're just cruising at this point. You're still fighting for home court advantage, and you need to be this is the time where you really got to get serious and figure out stuff that works, stuff that doesn't work, rotations and all that. You shouldn't be having necessarily that kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. To me, it's more about the struggles that they've had, regardless of a 20-point win last night. 7-8 since the break, so not great there.
Russ is out.
They've lost a pretty significant lead. It looked like for a while they were going to be at least number 4.
They were fighting for the 1 seed.
Yeah, and that's not happening now. They're going to be either 4 or 5 most likely. 24th in defense since the All-Star break as well for a team with this many awesome perimeter defenders.
Team with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Can't happen.
And then the Kawhi back thing. I know he's played the last couple games here, but when he left the building and just walked off the bench and went out of the arena, what was that, a week
really
ago
weird.
now?
Yep.
That was really strange and concerning, and I hope he's all right, but that did not look good, and obviously health is a massive issue with this team, always has been and always will be. But the biggest concern I have is what Paul George said. Did you see this quote?
I did not, so let's hear it.
They lost to the Hawks. This was on Sunday, and I have this written down here. He said, quote, "We want to be a team that's consistent, and we want to establish an identity. I've always spoken about having an identity, and I think it's extremely important. Right now, I don't think we have an identity." And, maybe it's just because they're struggling. They probably felt more like they had one a month ago when they were playing so well. But for a guy who's about to be a free agent, doesn't have a contract extension when we all thought he was getting one.
He's going to be 34
Yeah,
next
he's
year.
up in his 30s already, and a team that's not young, clearly. Kind of an issue that now you're having guys come out and talk about what the team needs to get better at when it looked like you were going to cruise into the playoffs as the biggest threat to the Nuggets. And now, not only are the people outside the team wondering about you because you haven't played great, now the guys even on the team and the best players on the team are wondering what's wrong. So that is a concern. 24th in defense since the All-Star break. Like that is not good. That's really bad.
Yeah, that's very concerning, and they need to figure out what's gone wrong, and they need to get it fixed before the playoffs start, because they may have one more year after this, but their chances are running out. And Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they're not going to be elite forever, and especially Paul George is a free agent. Who's to say if he leaves, you could argue this team is done.
And there was a rumor yesterday that Philly is waiting.
Yeah,
Philly maybe thinks they can get him.
Philly could be a strong contender for him, and they're trying to keep Embiid happy, so that could be a possibility. So they really need to get serious, and they need to figure out what to do. And look, when fully healthy, this team has 4 Hall of Famers, a bunch of good defenders, and they have one of the better coaches in the league in Ty Lue. So they're gonna be a team that's a big threat. I will say again, they've struggled recently, but if the season ended today, I do like their path. If the season were over today, they would avoid Denver till the conference finals. If they were able to beat the Pelicans, they play the Thunder in the second round right now. So that would also be cool. PG and Russ playing against the Thunder.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think happens with that 4 or 5? Because I think the Pelicans are going to pass them actually.
In terms of the regular season,
yeah. Where do you think we finish here with the standings with that?
Yeah, I'll say the Pelicans are going to pass them just because. Again, they're a bit of a younger team. They haven't been there before. I think home court advantage probably matters more to them than I think it does to the Clippers.
They're really pushing for it. The Clippers are not.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and that's been the thing with the Clippers, right? We've always liked the roster. We know they have big-time stars. But we've always wondered, well, when is the health going to improve? That's number 1. And number 2, it's when are you guys going to take the regular season as seriously as you need to? And finally, they did it. Yeah. They did it for a couple of months. It looked like they were really starting to figure things out. They played so great after the Harden trade. And now we're in a 15-game slump where it just is so just kind of nonchalant the way they're playing and not inspiring the way that it looks out there. So I worry about them because you want to go into the playoffs with positive momentum, and they don't have it.
You want to have some mojo going into the playoffs, and they're certainly lacking that right now. But they still have a few weeks to get everything figured out. Maybe Russell Westbrook coming back could be a big help if they can get him.
20 minutes, like even that, like. Yes, he's a
loss. But sometimes also just having a guy out there that provides a spark, brings energy, gets people fired up. It matters. It matters.
But I wonder how much
things make a difference. And
one other thing I'll mention with the Clippers, because you said when we talked about how he's a free agent and he could leave, and same with Harden. Him and George.
Yeah, Harden's also a free agent.
Up for contracts. Well, this is a team that we've already talked about how old it is. If they give those guys big contracts, like we expect them to,
they'll be done.
Max level, near max level. There's no other way to improve the team because you're so deep into the second apron.
Yeah, well, you get no mid level. You get no mid level, and you can't trade contracts away.
Yeah,
right?
There's almost nothing you can do. It's basically sign minimums and draft picks. That's about it. And even trades are really hard. So if they go into that second apron, which I expect them to do, and we think that that's what we think.
Especially opening a new arena, you need business to be high.
It would make sense for them to do that, but if we go through the season, this is probably as healthy as it's ever going to get with these three guys.
Yeah.
Because James didn't have, I think he played like almost 60 games in a row after coming over.
Crazy.
Kawhi's been mostly healthy. PG's been mostly healthy. And you have a lot of depth. That depth is going to go away once you cross the second apron next year. And you're not going to be able to have the same flexibility. You're not going to be able to make trades. And you're going to need to rely on these guys to continue to be healthy because you don't have anybody else to put out there who can score and win games. Like, this season's huge for them because this might be their best shot. I'm not sure if they're going to get a better one after this.
Yeah, I would say this is their best shot with Kawhi, PG, and Harden. I just can't see it getting better than this. So
yeah, I don't either.
They gotta if they're gonna do it, they gotta do it now.
Same kind of thing for Phoenix. I think goes for them as well. But
yeah, I mean, KD's 36, so time is money.
And they're spending a lot of money on that roster.
Gotta move it along. All right, let's move on. We're gonna switch over to the Eastern Conference. We're gonna talk about a couple injuries. One's bad news. One is very, very good news. All right, so we'll start with Cleveland Cavaliers. So obviously, we talked about it last week. They've had some injury problems with Donovan Mitchell, but it seems they are very concerning at this moment. The Cavaliers posted this on their Instagram, I believe a couple days ago. I'm going to read it right here. So this is from the Cavs Instagram 2 days ago.
Okay.
Donovan Mitchell sustained a nasal fracture at Houston on March 16th and missed the Cavaliers' next game at Indiana on March 18th. They actually went on to win that game, surprisingly. A medical procedure was performed this morning at Cleveland Clinic to realign the affected area. Mitchell will be reevaluated in approximately 1 week, and his status will be updated as appropriate.
Ouch. Nasal fracture?
Yep.
And had surgery on that.
So Donovan Mitchell is going to be out for at least another week, probably at least another 5 days as of today. So he's going to miss that time, and that's just reevaluated. So it's probably going to take him another couple days
to get back.
Back as well.
And once he does, he's
How
probably
well
going to have to wear the mask. Like, that's going to be uncomfortable. We know how guys struggle with that. And that's not to mention, Jack, he just had a PRP injection in his left knee.
Yeah.
And he's missed, 11 out of the last 16 games now for that before the nasal issue.
Yeah.
So, it's just coming down on the Cavs hard. You know, they can't seem to catch a break.
Yeah, so he's dealing with some injuries, and probably at the worst time. They have struggled recently. They're 4-6 in their last 10. And it really should be 3-7. They were very lucky to win that game, as I said, in Indiana. That was surprising to me. Tyrese Halliburton.
And they were lucky Max Strus hit a 60-foot buzzer beater.
That too. But mainly Tyrese Halliburton was just terrible in that game. If he was any part of his normal self, they would have won that game. And that's just a game in terms of Indiana you can't lose. But either way, Donovan Mitchell is dealing with multiple injuries. Evan Mobley is out. They haven't been playing their best basketball as the season nears. I think they're in big trouble. And
I do too.
And it really is surprising to me because last week I felt very different, but I feel confident. Also, I looked at the schedules ahead of time. I don't remember what they are exactly, but I know this in terms of New York. I know after this game tonight in Denver on March 21st, the Knicks have 4 games against non-playoff teams. So I think they're probably going to be heavily favored to win all of those. Cleveland's got a little bit of a tough part of their schedule. I believe at this point now the Knicks are going to pass them.
Yeah, a week ago I did not think it was possible. Now it's something that they could potentially do. They're a game and a half out, and the Knicks have a lot of momentum. They've won 4 straight, 6-4, getting healthier. We'll talk about that in a second.
Jalen Brunson is playing his absolute best basketball of the year at the right time.
You look at who's playing for Cleveland. I just looked up who played for them in the last couple games.
Sam Merrill's come out of nowhere.
Yeah, but it's guys like George Niang's getting close to 40 minutes, and Isaac Okoro, and they're good players, but you can't play them 40 minutes and expect to win games. It's not going to happen.
And Tristan Thompson just returned.
Yeah.
And Marcus Morris, 2 guys that are
on a 10-day contract. Marcus Morris.
Seriously, so I don't know how they're even doing this, but Cleveland is certainly in trouble. They need Donovan Mitchell to be at his best, and even if so, Donovan Mitchell, even when he's been 100% healthy, he's had his playoff struggles as well. And
last year was not good for him.
Last year was not good. Neither was the year before that. In his last year in Utah, where he lost to Dallas when Luka was out with injuries. I believe Luka missed the first 3 games of that series.
Yeah.
So, not a good look, and they need him to be healthy, and they need to get Mobley back before. As good as Jared Allen and Darius Garland are, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be enough, especially to finish out the year.
Yeah, this season, they're definitely kind of looking at an uphill battle right now to advance deep in the playoffs. And then, if they lose early, let's say first or second round, then that's a really interesting question of what the summer looks like. And we've been on this for months already. Donovan's a year out from free agency. There was an argument you could have even looked into trading him at the deadline, but they played so well going in
the offseason.
That they didn't trade him, and I understand why. They played great. But like he could leave in a year. The Knicks will certainly be involved. Other teams, maybe there's trade offers that come in this summer for Donovan. And I know if you're the Cavs, you want to keep this group of 4 as long as you can around with Garland, Mobley, Allen, and Mitchell. But you just wonder if that's going to be something that they actually do long term if this second playoff run with these guys doesn't go the way that we think it might. So we'll see what happens there, but definitely not what you want on the end of March for a team like Cleveland.
Certainly. So we'll see where they end up finishing.
Yep.
So let's talk about some more positive injury news. And this one, at one point, I didn't think we'd be able to hear it, but let's talk about the New York Knicks. It was reported, I believe it was yesterday or Tuesday. I believe it was yesterday that it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson has finally returned to practice, and he practiced full contact. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Mitchell Robinson returns to the court for the New York Knicks. And as a Knicks fan who's been watching every game this year, I can't begin to tell you the importance of Mitchell Robinson. He played around, I believe it was 20 games this year. And in those games, he was arguably having an all-defensive season.
And he was leading the league in offensive rebounds, right?
I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
He had more offensive rebounds than I think a majority of teams in the NBA for when he went down with injury. That's how dominant. I believe he was averaging at one point like 6.5 offensive rebounds a game.
My God.
And that is, for this Knicks team, that's one of their biggest things. They may not always be the highest scoring team. They may not always be the best three-point shooting team, but they're the best rebounding team. They give themselves extra chances, and he's a huge part of that.
Yeah, he is. I kind of wonder what he's going to look like when he comes back, and I don't expect it to be in the next few days or anything, just because he's going to have to recondition himself after the injury like that. I wonder what the role will be, and I know we were texting about this a little bit yesterday. I think they should just start to bring him off the bench, and maybe that's a permanent thing for the rest of the year, because first of all, Hartenstein deserves the starting spot.
He's played fantastic.
But secondly,
they got to find a way to pay
Robinson's
him.
not a player that has a lot of skill, to be honest. He's not dribbling very much. He doesn't shoot the ball from any distance. He's really athleticism is what drives his game. It's the ability to come out and switch on to guards. It's protect the basket. It's rebound. It's run the floor. It's things like that. And maybe he gets back to that peak level of athleticism by the end of the regular season and into the playoffs. But that's probably a lot to ask for a guy who's been out for as long as he's been. So maybe if he plays short little bursts of 5-6 minutes and you total him around 15 to 20, something like that, to start with, and you kind of build him up. That's probably the way it will go. Because Hartenstein's been playing big minutes. He's been playing really, really well. And I think he probably should continue to start and play those big minutes, and you just kind of work Mitchell Robinson in and hope that by the time you get into the first or second round, if you can advance, then you have Robinson at full bore, and he can be somebody who's a hugely impactful player. But I don't think we're going to see that right away. Yeah,
probably not. And again, the most reports said that they expect him to be back before the end of March, so that's
like 10 days.
Yeah, 10 days. So hopefully he's back within the next 10 days, and he has a couple weeks to get his footing under him.
6-7 games.
Yeah,
probably.
6-7 games, and hopefully that's just enough. But we'll see what happens. But in terms of, I hear what you're saying, and again, I expect, like you said, I expect him to come off the bench. Personally, I would start him for reasons you just said. Obviously, he's not very skilled, and he's not that. He's all about athleticism, defense, rebounding, that kind of stuff. I think that works better in the starting five because, again, I say this, like, if he's on the court with Jalen Brunson, he's out there with OG or Randall if those guys come back, and obviously Dante.
OG, I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah, we're crossing our fingers. They said it's lingering. I think the league seems like Woj made it more concerning. Tom Thibodeau he's kind of made it like it was better. They just don't want to rush it, and they're just trying to be careful.
Right, because trusting Tibbs at the microphone is such a trustworthy guy.
Hey.
But anyway.
Hey. All right. As I was saying, but more so, I'm saying as if everything goes according to plan. But I like Hartenstein off the bench just because, like you said, he's a much more skilled, and we've seen this year when Jalen Brunson is off the court and we go to that bench unit, they look lost sometimes. And I like the fact that Hartenstein, what he does well is obviously he brings the effort defensively, but he does have a good soft touch near the rim.
He can pass well.
He's a great floater, and he's a playmaker, so yeah. I like that in the second unit, especially sometimes the offense is struggling. You can just dump it in, let him lay it up, and hopefully it goes in. They've really missed that, so I think that could be a benefit. Like I said, I expect Mitchell Robinson to come off the bench, and Hartenstein has certainly earned the right to start with how good he's been this year. But either way, this news is great news for the Knicks. The more they can get, they have probably you could arguably say they have the best center combination in the NBA if Mitchell Robinson can return healthy.
And it's pretty stunning that we're at this point because it seemed like he was done for the season. That's what
Yeah,
everybody thought.
the Knicks filed for a disabled
player request, and they got it.
Request, and no, it was denied.
Oh, no, denied, right?
It was denied by the league
because they thought he was coming
back. The league looked at his medical record and said, "No, we think he'll be able to return."
But it's pretty amazing because big guys, like, you would just think that it's going to take a lot longer than anybody reasonably expects them to get back for an injury like this, lower body. And yet here he is before the end of the regular season, and it looks like he's going to play. That's just not the norm for guys of his size who have had the injury history that he's had. So it's pretty amazing he's rehabbed and gotten himself to this point. So I'm crossing my fingers for him. I hope he's back and looks really good.
Yep. All we can do is hope that Mitchell Robinson and all the other injured Knicks can come back and they could do something special. So we'll hope, but Mitchell Robinson expected to come back sooner rather than later.
All right, let's debate.
All right, let's talk about a debate. So we said we were going to mention Kyrie Irving and the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie Irving against Denver, I believe that was Sunday, had one of the most incredible buzzer beaters in terms of shot that I've ever seen. With about 2 seconds left, he drove to the free throw line and pulled up a left-handed hook shot.
Over Nikola
Jokic and got it to drop in. You could say a lot of things about Kyrie Irving, but the one thing you have to say about him is that man is clutch. And he made that shot, and it was a huge win for Dallas. And so now we're going to debate about game-winning shots. What is the greatest game-winning shot in NBA history? So Noah and I are going to debate. I'll let you start.
All right.
So what do you got?
So I'm trying to avoid shots that I deem to be like lucky or just something that's totally random, because then I could go with a 60-foot shot from half court, or a shot that bounced off the rim 7 times, something like that. I'm going to go with a shot that I think was based on the guy's actual skill level.
Okay.
And that's Damian Lillard in 2019 when he hit that shot over Paul George to win the first-round series at the buzzer. That shot was for 50 points. It was from 37 feet. And it was a step-back three-pointer to the right, which for a right-handed shooter, dominant with his right hand like Dame is, that's a much tougher shot. You see guys, typically they step back left because it's a lot easier to do that. And that's a shot that I would prefer if I was playing. The right-sided step back is much, much harder. And he drilled it over one of the best defenders in the league to win a playoff series. His second, by the way, playoff winning series buzzer beater. Something that nobody else, I believe, has ever done.
Yeah.
So that, to me, all-time skill, all-time shot making, and so perfectly Dame. Such a clutch player, one of the greatest in league history doing stuff like that.
Certainly fair. If I had to pick one from Dame, I like the first one better. I just feel like the moment's so much more iconic.
All right.
The
one against Houston.
The one against Houston, yeah, that one's great. But I mean, come on, Noah. As much as I respect you, there's only one right answer to this question, and that is, it may be a little lucky, but also has meaning behind it, and that is Kawhi Leonard.
Oh, come on, that's so lucky.
No, Kawhi Leonard in Game 7. In Game 7 in the second round against the Philadelphia 76ers. I get it hit the rim a couple times. But
it was like 7 times.
But hey, he got a great shot, and he got it over Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Two basically 7-foot monsters at that point. And also, the meaning behind the shot.
At that point is the key part when you said Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I said at that point. You can't say it wasn't. All right. Anyway, he hit that crazy shot. And what did it lead to? What did Dame's shot lead to? You know what happened after he hit that shot? They got swept by Golden State, and they went home. Kawhi Leonard hit that shot, and he went on to defeat Giannis, and then he, at one point, looked like he was ending the Golden State Warriors dynasty, and he brought Toronto their one and only championship. So what it led to also, and it's the most iconic moment, a part of that championship run, and I think it's just truly one of the best moments maybe in NBA history.
Sure. Did it lead to a title? Yes. But you know what was the biggest thing that led to the Raptors winning that title? Is Kevin Durant tearing his Achilles and hurting himself already with the injury before that he had to his calf. That's to me, fair. Is probably the bigger deal, to be honest. With Dame, remember, I understand they got swept. He had never won more than one playoff series in any season. He ended up winning against Denver the next round. They go to a conference finals. They play a Warriors team they had no business being on the same court as, frankly.
No, that was bad. Kevin Durant missed that whole series.
But that was that was the 73-win Warriors then. And they got
swept.
No,
it wasn't. They didn't have any depth on that team. They had guys, they were playing lineups with Steph, Quinn Cook, and Sean Livingston.
Sean Livingston was on the 73-win team. He was one of the key
guys.
But
he was like falling out of the rotation at that point.
That Warriors team without Durant was still very
good. And Boogie Cousins still had the injury. That Warriors team was very light in depth once Kevin Durant went down.
And the Blazers still had no business being on the court then, but they still got there, and that was very impressive. And his shot didn't bounce off the rim 5 times. It was one of the most insane shots because of how difficult it was from almost 40 feet from the basket to score 50. And here's the other thing, too. That Oklahoma City team was favored against them in that series. And not only did that shot end their season, it ended the Thunder as we knew it. Because Paul George was then traded to the Clippers. Russell Westbrook was then gone. He went to Houston. And the Thunder's run of, 10 years basically, that started with Russ and KD being drafted and then all the way through. Right, Russ had been there for so long. And that was the end of it. He ended Russell Westbrook's tenure and that entire legacy in his era in Oklahoma City. That's a big part of it, too. They were not supposed to win that series, and yet they won it on an insane shot like that. And it wasn't lucky.
I don't know. Can I say that a 40-foot shot isn't... There's part of luck.
Well, no, because he's the second greatest distance shooter in history.
Yes, I know. He's one of the best distance shooters in history. I think he was shooting 40% back there, actually, that season. So, certainly impressive, but... Again, how much he shoots a lot of them, but how much does he actually like? I can believe like Kawhi Leonard. He practices that shot that he took daily. That's like it was a little bit. It was a mid-ranger.
And Dame does it. I mean, come on.
You think I don't know? You think in practice he's shooting 50, 40-foot 3-pointers?
Yeah, I bet him and Steph and those guys are absolutely shooting those shots. I don't.
All right,
do you think Kawhi is taking
maybe more so
1
now.
second to shoot a shot? That basically almost hit the rafters over 2 7-footers. I doubt it. I don't think he's practicing.
I don't know.
That
Again,
shot.
they're both great shots, and who's to say? And also, a part of me also feels like I've said this before. If Philly wins that series, I think they win the championship that year. He also sent Jimmy Butler to Miami, and that was
That's true. He did
that was sort of the end of Ben Simmons. You could argue that shot took Ben Simmons' soul, and he really hasn't been the same player
next year
since.
was even worse,
so
but sure.
he set Ben Simmons into being a bench warmer, and he sent Joel Embiid into tears. Joel Embiid left the court crying. He set Brett Brown. He got Brett Brown fired after that game, or was it? I believe so.
Yeah, he did.
So,
yeah,
a lot of stuff happened with that. So these two shots are both iconic, and they're
from the same year.
Same year, yeah. So they both played their part in NBA history. So comment below whose buzzer beater do you think was more iconic, and if you guys have a different game-winning shot that you think was better, please leave it down below. And
I only
let us
went
know.
with ones that I had seen personally. I wasn't going back to the 70s and 80s and everything, but of shots that I've seen, Dame's was number 1. So.
Yeah, certainly fair. All right, anything else you want to say before we sign off here?
No, just another great episode. Can't wait for the playoffs. We're getting close, and with March Madness going on, I mean, man, this is like the time for basketball. There's like no better time than this.
Certainly, March is always fun. All right, this podcast is produced, engineered, and co-hosted by Jack Acello and Noah Schwartz. Our theme music was composed and produced by Jeffrey Taylor. One-on-One is executively produced by Gavin Berger with High Tops Media. And thanks again to Gregory and 44 Media in Hillsdale, New Jersey. Be sure to check out all their content and social media platforms at 44 Media Visuals. You can rate and review One-on-One on Apple Podcasts and follow us on Instagram at One-on-One-Pod. And see more of our content with High Tops Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at High Tops Media and at High Top Sports. That's all we got for today. Jack Acello and Noah Schwartz saying we'll see you next time for some more One-on-One.
Bang.